Hello, my friends, and welcome back into the channel. Thanks so much for being here. Well, welcome if you're new. I have two pair of very beginner-friendly earring designs I'm going to share with you today. Very, very beginner-friendly, very, very simple. So if you're new to jewelry making, this is for you, and you are going to see every little step of the way of how to make two really beautiful, dangly pair of earrings. So we'll get right to it. I am using some beads from my Spring in Central Park's Sparkle Bag, but you could, of course, use any beads. I want to make a pair that is going to match this darling wrap bracelet that I made last week. I love this so much. So, so cute. These are going to be pretty much like not matchy-matchy, but more complementary, the earrings. And then we're going to do a beautiful pair of floating earrings on coreana beading chain. So the supplies that you will need to make these earrings, I'm using some 22 gauge craft wire, and I'm using some 0.8 millimeter coreana beading chain in 304 stainless steel. Of course, I'm going to be using some 2x2 crimp tubes to do our float here. Some standard air wires. I'm also going to use a couple of 5 millimeter oval jump rings, a couple of clamshells, and that is it, and all of our standard tools. Let me zoom you in and let's show you where we're going. So this is just a very simple, very, very simple design, but so pretty nonetheless. We're just going to use some 22 gauge wire to create a knotted head pin and two components here. So pretty and just so dangly, very lightweight. I just love them, the little butterfly on there. So, so pretty. What I also love about these is the texture, the different shapes and sizes. I've got some of the twist beads here in the clear, some of the rectangles. I've also got some of the fire polish and some rounds, and of course that beautiful butterfly bead there. So it's a really, really beautiful texture. Very, very beautiful. And so very beginner friendly. And then we are going to make a float. And if you're not familiar with a float, we'll get right to this one first. Let me just lay it down. All it needs is an air wire. These are very, very beginner friendly, very easy to make. You can really customize a pair of earrings like this. Or if you want to do a bracelet or necklace, the same technique applies. Once you get this technique down, you're off to the races because it's so simple. But truly, when you're wearing jewelry like this on this coreana chain, they truly look like the beads are floating. They look like they're floating. I get so many compliments. And so we're going to make these beauties. And on this, I have some of those twisted clear and then also some 4 millimeter beautiful olive jade gemstones there. They're just so darling. So let's make those first. The coreana beading chain. I have cut a 3-inch piece times 2. I like long dangly earrings, but really you can cut your length any size. I would, however, recommend that you do cut your chain pieces before you put your beads on it or put it in a clamshell, and that way you know they're pretty good to even. And we'll use 2 clamshells, and then we're going to use some crimps. So I'm going to use some 2x2 crimp tubes. You could use crimp beads as well. But notice one of my crimp tubes is in like a gunmetal color. That is the crimp tube I'm going to use for my clamshell because you cannot see it. Once we close up that clamshell, you will never see that crimp again. So it really does not matter, friends, what color crimp bead you use inside that clamshell because we'll never see it. Okay, and then we'll use, it looks like we have a 1, 2, 3, 4 crimp tubes. So you'll need a total of 5 crimp tubes for each of your earrings. Let's go ahead and get started. What I like to do once I've cut my chain is I like to work from the top down. So I'm going to get the clamshell on there first. So what I'll do is go ahead and feed on my clam. And I'm going to feed it with the belly facing up. So I'm just going to go ahead and get that chain fed right through that clamshell and kind of hold the clamshell in my fingers here. Then I am going to put the crimp tube right on that chain And then what I'm going to do is grab my chain nose pliers. Any flat nose chain nose will work. And I'm going to crimp this tube down on my chain. So what I'll do is, notice I've grabbed the crimp tube here. I'm going to pull it up as far as I can go, but still leaving a little bit of a tail on the end of my chain there. We don't need much, but we want some tail. Otherwise, the crimp tube will fall right off, right? So we want that to adhere to that chain or grab the chain. So right at the end there, I'm going to go ahead and give that a nice squeeze. And that's what I have. And I'll do my tug test just to make sure that that's on there. And it is. It's not coming off. I'm going to go ahead and pull my clamshell up now, right? And what I can do before I close up my clam is, if I want to put some adhesive in here, you absolutely can do that. Just put a little dab of E6000, GS Hypo, or your Loctite gel control, your super glue. Any of those, any good adhesive that you like will work. That'll just give you extra security. Just put a small dab right inside that clamshell, and then we will go ahead and close the clam up. What I like to do is squeeze it gently on the belly, not too hard. I kind of like to go slow and steady wins the race there, because these clamshells, guys, they are so delicate. If you are not familiar with using clamshells in jewelry making, they are really a great closure. But right on the bottom here, notice how thin that piece of metal is, right? That's really the entire thing that holds this entire clam together, is that little piece of metal right there. And if you work with these too much, or try to open them too much, that will give way, because it's just a very small piece of metal on the bottom there holding either side of that clamshell together. So I'm going to go ahead and close that up, and that's done. Now that part is done. Now, so every time I put on a bead, I'm going to end up putting on a crimp, and that crimp that I put below each bead is designed to keep that bead stationary, right? In other words, floating. So a really, really fun, simple technique. So I'll go ahead and feed that bead on my chain. And then I'm going to go ahead and feed on a crimp. I'm just going to fish them right off of my mat. And then I'm going to feed on the next bead that I want to put on. In this case, it's this clear oval crystal. Oops. And then I will put another crimp on. So I'll just slide that crimp on there. Then I'm going to put another olive jade 4mm gemstone. And then I'm going to put on the clear crystal. And then, of course, another crimp. And then I'm going to finish it with a jade on the bottom there. You can use just about any beads on coreana beading chain. So long as the bead holes fit on your chain, you are good. And this is 0.9mm. 0.9mm coreana chain I'm working with. So that's what I have. I basically have a bead, crimp, couple beads, crimp, and then a bead, and then a crimp. And then what I like to do is, if I want them to be pretty close to matching, I'm going to lay the other earring I've already completed right next to this one. And I'm going to hold this side of my chain with my left hand here. So that just kind of, you can also grab a pair of pliers. It just kind of keeps it stable for me. And I'm just going to kind of lay it just like this directly next to the other earring. And I can see that I have that first jade bead right there. But what I'm really looking at is the crimp. So I'm just going to grab the crimp, put the crimp bead between my pliers here, and I'm going to go ahead and pull that up or down into place wherever it needs to be, and then I'm going to just give it a nice squeeze. And so this looks like that's pretty close to across from the other one, and I'm just going to squeeze it. And that flattened the crimp down, and now that should hold that bead in place. You can always check by grabbing your crimp, and that one is not quite clamped down, so I'm going to grab it again and see if I can squeeze it a little harder. And you do have to be careful to not break your chain, but now it's on there. And I'm just going to continue doing that. So I'll grab this next crimp, and I'm going to look right across from it. So I'm looking right here at this crimp, and then I'm going to put my chain nose right between that crimp tube on the top and the bottom on the chain there, right? And then I'm going to grab it and go ahead and squeeze until I feel that grabbed my chain. And then I'm going to go to the next one, which is right here. And I'm going to put my pliers over there and squeeze. And now once I have all of these in place, which I now do, I am going to kind of turn it around this way, and I'm going to grab the earrings. So I'm going to grab the bottom of the chain with my pliers here, kind of pull it up to me, and then I'm going to grab this crimp and pull it to the end, and that's going to be our stopper crimp for the whole earring, right? And same thing we did up here with the clamshell. We want a little bit of a tail, and we don't want, because we want, the crimp has to grab that chain, right? So we want a little bit of tail. We don't want it to be off the chain. The crimp needs to be on the chain. So I go right to the edge, and then I'm gonna go ahead and squeeze it once, and then I'm gonna grab it and squeeze it a second time nice and firmly, but not too firm as to break my chain. And I'm gonna grab this crimp and make sure that I got it on there. If it feels loose, I will squeeze it again. And notice how it kind of flattens it out there. And it's on there pretty good. But I can always, squeeze for good measure. And now I will pull this up and show you when I'm hanging it on my ears. All of my little beads will stop at their respective crimp stations, so to speak, and we have a darling pair of floating earrings. Now, in this case, what I am going to do is use some ovals. So these are some oval jump rings. You can, depending upon the ear wires you're using, you probably can get your clamshell right on your ear wire. If your clamshells you're using, these are an 8mm clamshell, by the way, guys, I forgot to mention, you can absolutely put those on there, right? Just like that, if you want to do it that way. Or you could add a jump ring and put them on your ear wires. And the reason it's like I'm indifferent, but the reason sometimes I throw a jump ring on here is truly because sometimes the clamshell might want to come apart if I didn't glue it, right? And so that just kind of keeps it together as well. But if you're gluing, you're good. So we'll just close that up, and then we can just go ahead and slide that right on our ear wire as well. And there we go. So there is our olive jade. I'm actually going to put these on a different pair of earrings, but there's our olive jade floating earrings, a super beginner friendly project. I really love these. These are really great. They're so lightweight. They're great for all times of year, warm weather, whatever the weather. You truly cannot go wrong with the floating earrings. You can really have some fun. You can make them super, super long if you would like to. You can also use 2 pieces of chain. I've done that as well. just a really, really fun earring. So pair number 1 is done. The next pair we're going to make, my friends, are these little darlings, and this is just some really, really beginner-friendly, simple wire work here. We're just going to make our own knotted head pin, and we're going to make a component on the top and just slip it on an ear wire. We're just going to be doing some regular, good old-fashioned wire wrap loops here. Take that excess wire, wrap it on the outside, just give it a little pop, a little something extra. We're going to wrap the top right there to the bottom, and then we can pop that right on our ear wire. So the only thing besides our beads we need for this one is, in fact, craft wire. Yay! So let me grab my beads over here. So I have already cut 2 pieces of 22 gauge dead soft craft wire here. And I've cut a working piece. I don't like to run out, so I've got probably about a 7-8 inch piece here. I'm going to go right to the end of my wire, and I'm going to go right to the edge of my plier with that wire. So there's no wire sticking above, right? I'm going to go ahead and start to turn this around, and I'm going to go around in a circle just like this on my plier, and lay a couple of wraps on top of, or below each other, rather, not on top. So they're right next to each other, just like that, until I come around to where I started, which is right there. Okay? And now I'm going to go ahead and push this wire up. We'll remove it from the tool. Okay, that's what we have. And now I'm going to grab that wire, and I'm going to pull it through that little coil we just made. So we'll pull it through just like that. Now I'm going to grab my nylon jaw pliers, put it right up against there. I'm going to grab another pair of pliers and grab the wire, and I'm just going to kind of pull them in opposite directions here. And let me trim that off a little there. Want any pokies. And there we go. So we've got the knotted head pin, and then I'm going to feed on my beads that I've selected. So I've got that, I've got my crackle, and then I have this pretty little 4mm, really pretty bead, and then a lime green fire polish. And those are my 4 beads there. And let me play out a little bit. What I'm going to do now is I am going to put my chain nose right above that fire polish and go ahead and bend my wire over. I'm going to go now in to do a regular wire wrap loop. So I'll put my pliers right in that bend and come up and around with the wire. Rotate my plier, continue to push that wire to the back, and now I want to make sure that my loop is straight on my pliers here. And what I'm going to do is wrap this wire around, and instead of stopping just to fill up the neck there, I'm just going to wrap it all the way down the whole ear wire, or ear component, excuse me, and just do something pretty and decorative. So first I'm going to go 3 wraps there. And now when I come around again, I'm kind of going to go over on an angle, right? Kind of starting to bring that wire down. And I'm going to remove it from my tool, a little bit easier to handle. And I'll just play with the wire and kind of go like that. And they don't have to both be exact, just very artistic looking, very unique and beautiful. And I think on this one I did not wrap my butterfly bead, so I stopped my wire right there at the crackle. So to finish my wire, I'm going to put it between these 2 beads. I'm just going to wrap it right around to the back here, and now I'm going to trim. And we should be good to go here. Make sure we just tuck that wire in if we need to right there just a little bit. And now we have our bottom component done. And now to make the top component, same thing with a 22 gauge piece of wire, about 7-8 inches. We're gonna do 2 wire wrap loops and we'll wrap it right to this bottom component. So I will start by putting a bend in my wire there. And then I'll go in with my round nose right in that bend. And we'll do a wire wrap loop. So we'll come up and around with the wire. Rotate the plier. I'm going to push this wire to the back, but before I finish that loop this time, I am going to attach it. So I need to open that loop, go ahead and feed my component on, let it drop in the loop, and now I'm going to close the door there with that loop and hold that loop right over my pliers. I'm going to flip this around to my dominant end here, and we'll just grab that wire and we'll do just 2 clean little wraps here. And then we'll trim the excess. This time I'm gonna wanna like have that front facing me, right? When I am doing this wire wrap loop. So this is going to be the front of my earring. So I need to bend the wire this way, right? So I need to bend the wire away from me, but make sure I'm holding my component with that front of my earring in front of me, right? So we'll bend the wire a little there, and then we'll go in, and again, I'm just gonna do a wire wrap loop. So we come up and around. I'm gonna do the same thing I did down here, and then just continue to wrap that wire. And so we'll rotate the plier. Let's push that wire to the back. Again, let's make sure that we're good and centered here, okay? And now I'm going to wrap that wire around and fill that neck right there up first. And then I'm going to take that out of my plier, right? And now I'm kind of looking at that front and just making sure that's facing me, right, as I continue with my wire down my earring here. So I will come over here, like on an angle, kind of go around that bead and then back around and kind of down. No right and wrong here, friends. It's just do something that looks pretty to you. Turn that bead that way. I'm gonna kind of try to come down. And now I'm just going to wrap that around where my wraps are in the bottom of that wire wrap loop. So we'll just pull that around, and I'll just go around once and then twice, and then we'll cut it off in the back here. And make sure we tuck that in. And voila, we are done. I hope you guys enjoyed. We just need to put an ear wire on this. So let me grab this one right here and see if that is my front. I think so. So I'll just put on a good old faithful, and we'll just close that ear wire up. And I have a really pretty pair of earrings. I believe they coordinate so pretty. Back to this wrap bracelet. I love it. I just think it's so cute. It doesn't match, but it coordinates. Just a pretty coordinating. Did I just put it on backwards? No. It's just a pretty coordinating set, I feel. Let me straighten that up a little bit. Very, very beginner friendly. I hope that you guys enjoyed. There is our little butterfly. We'll call them our butterfly blossom. They just look so pretty. Like the butterflies are just fluttering. And like, because all these colors, it's like the flower colors. And then we of course have 2 ways we can finish off our floats. Either we can put just our clams on our ear wires, or we can put a jump ring. And I do recommend an oval if you want to do a jump ring. I do recommend doing an oval. And so there's our coreana floating olive jade earrings as well. I hope you guys enjoyed. We will see you back on the mat soon. And Be blessed and keep sparkling, my friends.